doesn't, have I misstated your objection, Mr. Schoell?
I don't think that was entirely the nature of my objection, and if I stated it that way, I'll withdraw it. The objection was, as your board had discussions, you sort of got on both sides of the issue. If you want to hear new evidence, that's fine. It ought to relate to this order, or it ought to relate to what was heard from below. And as I said in my opening remarks, it shouldn't relate to green energy policy in Europe.
Well, that strikes me that that's more a relevance objection that can be raised as the evidence is offered to the board. Would that be fair to say?
That is fair to say, but I do object. I object to a witness coming in and presenting evidence that was not heard by the Secretary, not available to the Secretary. I realize that there can be public comments, and those comments will become part of the record, but I object to taking that evidence.
Let me ask you, what is the basis of that particular objection? Is it, if it's not relevance, what is the legal basis for objecting to evidence that doesn't relate to, that wasn't presented to the Secretary below?
It is relevant. I mean,
Okay.
The process below produced this order. You're here to review this order and make a decision about it. And if there was some information that wasn't available to the Secretary, didn't inform his decision on this, I think that's irrelevant. So that's the nature of my objection.
Okay.
Mr. Stevenson, just to establish that you're a solid citizen and that you have relevant expertise in this area, could you please tell the commissioners where you attended college, what you studied, and what degrees you hold?
I attended Rutgers University. I have a degree in agricultural economics, Bachelor of Science degree.
After your graduation from college, where did you spend your primary business career?
Spent 23 years at the DuPont Company in various sales, marketing, and business management, technical management positions. I was involved in a lot of financial analysis during that, as far as business plans. Worked on acquisitions and divestitures, analyzed project startups and whether they should be made or not. Also started 7 businesses while I was at DuPont. All successful, by the way. I was involved in the startup of the solar technology that's currently in use in 90% of the solar collectors in the United States. It's now $1 billion business for DuPont. And since then, I have started 4 businesses of my own, plus I am a angel investor for business startups. So I'm used to looking at business plans and financial plans.
Do you have any financial or special interest in the success or failure of the bloom energy fuel cell technology?
I do not. They're not on the public market, so I haven't invested yet. So.
How is it you came to get involved in this proceeding, and are you being paid for testifying as such?
I am not. The original actually startup was an invitation from Delmarva Power to participate in the team that would present the case for the Fuel Cell Act to the legislature. I had a number of meetings with Republicans and Democrats in the House and Senate talking about giving perspective as to the Fuel Cell Act.
Are you generally familiar with the proposed fuel cell generating facility that is involved in this proceeding?
I was an official intervener in the Public Service Commission hearing. I spent about 300 hours, I estimate, going over over 1,000 pages of documents, providing intervention comments, and testifying and cross-examining witnesses at the Public Service Commission hearing.
Based on your expert opinion, what do you feel would be the logical alternative to generate electricity that is...
I have to object to Mr. Stevenson offering an expert opinion on anything because there are no facts before the board upon which he can base an expert opinion right now. He hasn't testified as to anything. He just wants the board to hear a legal conclusion, and we don't know what's behind it.
I'll withdraw the question. How is the cost of electricity associated with the Bloom Cell project? How does the cost of electricity associated with the Bloom Cell project compare to other energy sources currently available in the PJM grid or the next logical alternative to new generation to meet electricity needs.
No, Mr. Board, I'm just going to object for the record. I don't think the witness has been qualified to offer an opinion on that. I think what I heard him testify to is he worked for DuPont, he started successful businesses, and he was an advocate in a proceeding before the Public Service Commission. I don't think he's been established to be an expert on the grid, on how energy is provided to the grid, what the best way to provide energy to the grid is. And he may have opinions on that, and they may be well-informed opinions, but I don't think he's got any level of expertise that justifies admitting it as expert testimony. If this board wants to treat it as commentary, I don't want to silence Mr. Stevenson. I just don't want a record created that this board has accepted that as expert testimony on a point where you need expert testimony.
If I may, just to summarize what my testimony is going to be, perhaps it would answer Mr. Schell's question. I am specifically addressing, I don't know your exhibit number, but in the application, pages 26 and 27 address economic benefits, and my comments are directly directed at that, omissions in that particular 2 pages, and my comments will all be related to information presented at the Public Service Commission hearing, which I also think is in your exhibits, but I'm not sure of the order.
Could you make a description of your area of expertise, Mr. Stevenson?
It has several areas. I do a lot of financial analysis, economic policy analysis. Published over 50 papers with the Cesar Rodney Institute, looking at the energy market primarily from an economic standpoint.
Those papers are published by your employer?
They've also been published by somewhere in the neighborhood of 5 to 10 articles in the News Journal, also in the Washington Times.
But they're not expert peer review types of organizations? Or has any of your work been published in a peer review academic setting?
No, they have not.
Have you ever been presented or accepted as an expert witness by any court?
No.
Any tribunal of any kind? And by that I would mean a commission, a board, or
I think I was certainly accepted so at the Public Service Commission hearing.
I was at the Public Service Commission hearing, and it's fair to say you were acting as the representative of Cesar Rodney Institute.
That's correct.
You didn't offer testimony that I recall, did you, sir?
Yes, it was written. It was not verbally. We simply submitted it in writing, and everybody had a chance to review it.
There were comments that you submitted as an advocate for Cesar Rodney Institute, correct?
Yes, representing the public interest.
All right. I would again submit, and I'm not trying to cut Mr. Stevenson off if the board wants to hear him. I just don't think he's qualified to offer expert testimony. And I don't want to create a record that his testimony has some special expertise that you need to rely on as lay people. So I would preserve my objection. Obviously, if you want to hear from Mr. Stevenson, I don't want to cut you off, but I do need to preserve an objection for the record.
Thank you. My testimony will be a lot shorter than the lead up to it. Again, it relates specifically to page 26 and 27 of the permit application, part 7, economic effects of the permit. There are some omissions that I would like to address. In this document, they talk about there will be 50 construction jobs with $150,000 a week of payroll. They have $2.5 million worth of construction supplies. The job will go on for 45 weeks. It will result in 15 permanent jobs. They give a kind of a breakdown of where the payroll is going. What I've done is simply taken this and put it into monetary terms of by year what the value of the economic benefit is. And it turns out it's between 2 and 2.5 million, depending on the assumptions that you make. But what was omitted is the negative benefits, to our society of the higher cost of power from the Bloom fuel cell project.
I have to object. He's relying on his description of what somebody said at a previous hearing, the PSC hearing. I'm not aware that there's a document in the record that supports that, and I object to Mr. Stevens' testimony in this regard as hearsay.
The document is in the, it's called the Public Service Commission staff.
Mr. Stevens, please.
If I could just clarify one point going forward, when an objection is made by one of the attorneys for the parties, if the person who's testifying could just stop and wait for the parties to argue with respect to the objection and give the board an opportunity to respond. I think we're at the point where an objection's been made. And I don't know if Mr. Schoell for Diamond State wants to add anything to what Mr. Phillips
I'll just
said.
wait to Mr. Phillips.